Hey guys, welcome to the live. It's Kim. Excuse the very harsh lighting in the situation that I am in. So I look my age instead of a little bit better. Just going to be perfectly honest on that one. Good lighting, very helpful the older we are, I think. So anyway, I'm here in we work. I'm at an office shared space in a little phone booth kind of situation. Just because of scheduling today, it worked out for me to be here rather than at home in my office. And so, thank you for joining me and thank you for being kind about various aging effects of this harsh lighting situation. Anyway, I'm here for your questions. I'm here for whatever you need. I'm here about 2 minutes early too. So some of you might be surprised by my early appearance because sometimes I'm late, but I was here, so might as well jump on and get started for people. So what's going on in the world? Still working on some research for a couple of videos. I'm geeking out hardcore about incretins, which I really want to call incretins. And my boyfriend had a really good thing. He said, generally speaking, with these words that are coming from Latin, the way you think they should be pronounced based on putting together two words that we use in English, is generally not the way they should be pronounced because incretin is in, the word in, and the word cretin, because we cretin is a word, which actually I guess is a word we might use, and it's also often an insult. So I put those two words together in cretin, incretin, and he's like, no, I think it's incretin. So there we go. Similarly, semaglutide is actually not semaglutide; it's semaglutide, and also what was the other one? Uh, There's a bunch of these words that I want to say wrong. I totally want to say wrong because most of these words I've learned from reading, not from what do you call it? Hearing. Wow, this is going to be an interesting episode because apparently today I am having word recall problems. But yeah, so yeah, hey Terry, I got here a little early. I just started to blather. Um, so yeah, I do not pronounce things naturally very well. It's sort of a bit of a joke in my family, not with my parents, but with my boyfriend, who seems to pronounce things very well. He has a natural aptitude for pronunciation. Maybe it's due to the fact him growing up in another country. I don't know, but he's really good at pronouncing most things, whereas I'm like, sound it out, go slow. This is hard. Um, so anyway, that's what that is. But I'm here at WeWork. Hey, Kit. Wow. Suzanne said, "Hey, Kim," and I almost said, "Hey, Kim," back. Hi, Suzanne. Hey Terry, glad to have you here. So, yeah, so I'm here for your questions, which includes telling me what you'd like to talk about. I have already complained bitterly about the harsh shadows in here. See, you can even see like my hair on my, it's a very, very strong light shadow situation. So that's like, all right, aging, fun with aging. Who has a question for me today? I can just keep talking about incretins. Super interesting. I'm doing a whole video on them because, I mean, it is required apparently that all health influencers do a video about Ozempic. But I'm going to tell you, I've watched a lot of health influencers' videos about Ozempic and related drugs. I don't think they're going deep enough. I'm going deeper. I'm taking it full geekitude on these drugs because I think there's some interesting stuff there. I would say probably Peter Attia went full geekitude, but to get his full geek, you actually have to be a member of his group, which I am. But still, we're going full geek on this. I hope I don't lose people because I've gone too geeky, but we'll see. We'll see. Wow, what am I doing to my hair? So I'm like, because they're super interesting. Terry said, thoughts on adding occasional nuts. I'm addictive, so I'm paranoid about adding too many, but maybe on salads are nuts bad for us in moderation? What? Here, here, here. Okay. Um, the poison is in the dose with almost everything. So, and also to add to insult to injury, I often say that phrase backwards instead of the poison is in the dose. The dose is in the poison. That doesn't mean anything, Kim, but it's part of my charm, verbal awkwardness. Um, so here's the deal. I have a couple of rules for myself around nuts. The first rule that I have around nuts is I don't eat any nuts unless I've weighed them. So I weigh and measure nuts every time. And my second rule is I don't eat them out of my hand. I have to weigh and measure them and they have to be in a dish or a thing. Or, I don't eat them and I certainly can't eat them out of the bowl or the container, or if there's like an unmeasured portion, right? So I will eat nuts on a salad. I won't eat them as a snack in my hand, right? So if you're asking, hey, how can I incorporate some nuts in my diet? The way you're talking about is the way I would do it. So, like a serving of nuts that barely fills up the like inner part of my palm is like 200 calories. These really add up. So I would say the way that I eat nuts instead is I'll measure out an appropriate macro servings worth for me, and then I'll eat them in a dish. So like sprinkled on a salad or something like that. So yeah, just don't free eat them, I would say. Noreen said, I have a question about Too Good yogurt. Is it good for keto? I think so. I like Too Good yogurt. The I've got a bunch of it in my fridge. I think it's a good source of protein. I don't have it in front of me for the ingredients, but I know that the total carb count of a container of the Too Good yogurt is only 3 total carbs. And so, I mean, that's pretty good for keto. And, if there's any sort of like marginally iffy ingredients in there, there's not a large quantity. Total carbs are pretty low. I don't think total carbs is the only thing we should think about. Certainly, like vegetable oil is 0 total carbs, but it's not probably the thing we wanna eat, but in my opinion, they're not very I'm not concerned about Too Good yogurt as long as you're not lactose intolerant, right? As long as you tolerate dairy. By the way, I think most of us tolerate some degree of dairy, and of the dairy that we could eat, yogurt being fermented means it's more tolerable than many other forms of yogurt, many other forms of dairy. Yogurt and cheese, more tolerable than milk, as an example. Um, Terry says, I would weigh them for sure, but I wasn't sure if they're worth it. I mean, that's a personal decision, Terry. I will say that like for me, if I'm choosing between like, I can have this much nuts or I can have this much fruit, I often choose the fruit, right? So I kind of worth it is dependent. But if you love nuts more than anything else, make it worth it, right? Make it fit for you. But you kind of have to weigh the costs and benefits. But um, there's nothing inherently harmful about nuts unless you're eating them in a quantity where the um, oxalates, because nuts tend to be a little higher in oxalates, um, cause you some sort of harm. Now, not everyone is so oxalate sensitive that that's going to be an issue. But like if you have issues with oxalates, nuts are high in oxalates, that might be a trigger for some of your symptoms, right? So, but if you don't have those kinds of issues, then it's really just weighing the dietary cost of them. For me, they're not often worth the caloric impact. I would rather have a lot more vegetables than a little bit of nuts or, things like that. But that's a very person to person discussion. Suzanne says, my birthday was last weekend. I was so hungry all weekend and most likely ate too much steak keto, but ate at the top of my maintenance. Now I find my carb cravings are on high. Any suggestions? Okay. So the question then is, generally speaking, if we go through a period of time where we were maybe pushing the upper tolerance of our carb threshold, then that can lead to increased carb cravings on the back end of that. So, what I would probably try to do, Suzanne, on the back end of that is not dip your calories too far right after that, but start to walk down your carb totals for a while and then maybe address the overall eating. So, give yourself some time. So maybe go a little more towards the carnivore end of the spectrum, more just meat and fat, and really ratchet down the carb count on your approach for a week or two, and then start to address the calories. Docs and Gal says, have been keto 2.5 years, never gained. Now I've gained 6 pounds and uh, can't seem to get it off. I think from overeating fat. I've been thinking about your podcast going to last safe place. Okay. So yeah, I would say if you've gained weight, one of the things I always look at is like, is this if this is something that happened really quickly, is this water weight gain or was this a slow drift where it's probably fat gain over time? And if it's fat gain over time, then just I would say start reducing your dietary intake of fat and see if that brings the weight down because that will often do that for people. Terry said, other than spray duck fat, are there other spray fats you prefer? I in my cabinet right now, I have spray olive oil. It's just easy to get, and I use it a lot. So spray olive oil works fine. Spray duck fat is great. Um, Fermented cheese lady said fermented dairy is good for gut health. Kefir, yogurt, and some cheese. Absolutely. Um, I'm a big fan of dairy. I use a lot of dairy in my life, especially yogurt, cottage cheese, those kinds of things. And she says, "Oh, healthy cheese lady says," which I will say it's probably not a surprise that someone with a title of healthy cheese lady would suggest dairy. I'm not against it. I just think it's cute. If you're hungry all day, try some full fat cheese to trigger some leptin. So there you go. Um, Terry says perfect. All right, great. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of debate in the keto world since we have healthy cheese lady here. Talk about it about whether dairy is good for or bad for weight loss. And I will say, in my experience and with my opinion, dairy use has actually been one of the best things I've been able to use for my fat loss. Now, what I do is I know healthy cheese lady might disagree, but I did higher fat dairy at the beginning of my journey. And now I do lower fat dairy, so like lower fat cheeses and lower fat yogurts to make sure I'm getting a lot of protein in fairly easily while still maintaining sort of the caloric range that I want to be in. But I think that cheese and low lactose type dairy products um, is really beneficial for for our possible weight loss efforts. Now, there are absolutely some people that have dairy intolerances, but generally speaking, that is digestively known, right? If you eat dairy and you feel terrible, then you know that that's you, or you get a rash or something like that. Um, Healthy Cheese Lady has asked me to explain the role of leptin. So, for those of you that aren't in the know, leptin and ghrelin are sort of the yin and the yang of your hunger hormones. So, leptin is actually a hormone that is triggered by having body fat, right? So, you look at it this way. When you so leptin is the satiety hormone, and ghrelin is the hunger hormone. Growl, ghrelin, right? Hunger, ghrelin. So when your ghrelin is increased, um, and you are hungrier. When your leptin is increased, you're more satiated, right? But what happens to a lot of people when they become obese, now you're supposed to have more leptin the more fat you have. So that's supposed to mean that overweight people feel more satiated. They have less hunger. But that's not often the case. Usually we find that people who struggle with overweightness um, feel hungrier than people that don't struggle, which would make sense, right? If you don't struggle, you're not going to have the overweight problem, but they have more leptin. So what's going on there? Well, it looks like that when we are overweight for long periods of time, our leptin we become leptin resistant. Just like we become insulin resistant, we can become leptin resistant. And that leptin resistance means our body doesn't really respond to leptin in the same manner as it does in a healthy leptin signaling person. And so even though we are swimming in a fair amount of leptin when we're overweight, um, we can sometimes challenge our body's ability to sense the leptin. So there you go. Healthy cheese lady, quite honestly, I don't know that I've done that much research into high fat cheeses and leptin signaling so that I could respond to that with a really solid, non invented description because I like to make sure I've done my research before. So, but I do agree that cheeses and yogurts are a great food for satiety. 100% agree with that. Dennis says, hey, greetings. Greetings back, Dennis. Um, having it to acknowledge exomorphins. I like dairy. I miss out too much dairy renders casein, caseinomorphins. So, yeah, there is a discussion around casein having a excitatory response in some of our brain chemistry that we respond to it sort of as if it is a little addictive. So some people say that cheese is like very addictive for them. The deal for me is that uh, I don't have that sort of excited response, like the addictive response to eating moderate fat dairy. Sure, I if you put a block of cheese right in front of me, um, I would continue to eat it because it's yummy, but have never experienced the kind of cheese cravings that I would experience in terms of carb cravings, right? And certainly things like I can moderate my cheese intake. And I would say, just as a reality, any food you struggle to moderate is probably a food you need to question if you continue to include in your diet. So that's just true across the board and does not require me to know anything about my brain chemistry. But if I if there's a food that I have in my fridge or pantry and I have obsessive thoughts about that food does not belong in my house, right? And that could be anything. I don't need to know the mechanism of action that that happens for, but if I struggle to moderate my intake of a food, I should probably not have it in a way that I can access it very easily. Now, for example, I went out to dinner with my mom and my family for her birthday. She turned 80 last week, and there was this beautiful cheese platter on the table. And every time I looked across the table, I was confronted with this beautiful cheese platter with some delicious cheeses on it. And yes, I definitely wanted to eat a lot of that cheese. And because it was a special occasion, I ate a lot of that cheese. But um, I don't like if there's like a block of cheese in my fridge at home, I'm not like the obsessed with the cheese in my fridge, and so it's not really a problem for me. But for other people, if that is a problem for you, if you cannot moderate your use of anything, I would say you should question whether you should have that in your house. So that's really the test, right? Mentions here, healthy cheese lady. I'm just gonna call her HCL. That that you can have an excital brain response to casein or and cheese, milk. All dairy products are primarily casein, well, except for like whey protein, but that's sort of a different thing. Because dairy, like if you milk a cow, it's of the proteins in it, 80% is casein protein and 20% is whey protein. So cheese, mostly casein, all that stuff. So any food that you can't control, just don't have it. Just don't have it in your house. Not all of us are moderators. So that's it. So, before we don't have to, I mean, somebody should study it for sure, but you don't have to go deep into the weeds about the biochemistry of it. You can definitely know that if you can't moderate it, probably want to not have it. Noreen says, friends are concerned that I eat bacon every day. Should I be? No weight gain. I eat eggs, meat, few green veggies, cheese, but not bacon. Um, not just bacon. Got it. Um, should you be worried about eating bacon every day? I mean, that's kind of the question you come up with. I wouldn't be that concerned. Um, uh, like there are some association studies that would say that highly processed meat is not our best choice of meat. Um, and at the same time, those studies are not on people that aren't also eating a bunch of crap. So, is bacon the worst thing we can eat? Absolutely not the worst thing you can eat. Is it the best thing we can eat? Probably not. So, I don't have a problem with regular bacon use. I don't have a problem with bacon use. And if eating bacon makes you very happy and means that you then don't eat crappier foods, then I'm pro bacon. So it's all it's a gradation, right? So the foods that there's like foods that are beneficial, foods that are neutral, and foods that are bad for us, right? There's kind of a continuum, like as you weigh the costs, right? Like there's it's a continuum. I would put bacon somewhere in the middle, right? So if when you eat bacon, you don't eat foods that cause you more harm, then bacon is a net positive. If you might replace bacon with something else that is a net positive or is a just a bigger positive, well then that might be better. But like we are not a math problem. We are a person. Bacon makes you happy and you're eating it in an amount that means a net positive on your overall dietary intake. I'm pro bacon, right? That's the food should include pleasure. So that's where I go with that. Um, let's see what else we got here. Jean says it's the cheese, crackers, and fruit together. So great tasting, and then I go over a cliff. Yeah, absolutely. Um, Dachshund Gal says, I hear you. I know anything sweet need to stop. I know I need to give up diet drinks, low carb sweeteners, completely get rid of cravings, but I still fighting that. So it's it's all a continuum. So when you've got like, do the sweeteners in and of themselves cause a problem? Probably not. Do the sweeteners cause you to be hungrier over the course of a day? If they are, then they're a net problem. It's all just kind of weighing these things. So maybe set yourself up for a 30-day challenge without any sweeteners and then see if that's helpful to you across the board in terms of getting closer to achieving your goals. Rather than saying, I'm going to cut these out forever, try saying, I'm going to cut these out for a period. And then at the end of that period, you can reevaluate um, all the costs and benefits. Dawn says the lactose-free Fage yogurt is great, but cheese doesn't work for me. Yeah, you got to find what works for you if you got digestive issues from lactose. Healthy Cheese Lady says people on keto meeting dietary goals consuming full fat dairy. Absolutely. I think full fat dairy can be awesome. Certainly, on my journey, there have been periods of time where I've done like full fat Fage yogurt, full fat Greek yogurt, which I just said the same thing kind of twice. Full fat cheeses. I think they could be a healthy part of our diet. I also think that moderate and lower fat dairy can also be beneficial for some people in certain circumstances, depending on sort of some of their goals and needs. I think when I first started keto, there was this belief that lower fat dairy, I'm just using the term in general, obviously, some dairy is better than others for keto, that lowered fat dairy always meant more carbs or was always bad for keto. And I found that maybe things have changed a little bit, but I found that to be not the case. Now, I will say, like if you go to the supermarket and you look for a low fat yogurt, those are going to be pumped full of sugar and should be avoided. But if you look at like unflavored, unsweetened Greek yogurt, like a Fage 2% versus a Fage 5%, There's not more carbs in the 2%. So, in terms of for keto, certainly you could do either. Um, that being said, I think a higher fat keto diet is very important for somebody new to keto. If you're new to keto, do not cut the fat too low, because it makes it really hard. So I think you can dial the fat up or down based on your goals, based on where you are on your journey, based on like how you're achieving your goals versus your experience. So absolutely, a thing. Noreen says exactly what I do. I eat bacon, eggs, or just bacon almost every morning. Not hungry. Eat again until 4 or 5. Bacon makes me happy. There you go. Um, Karen says, I'm not understanding how much protein and how much I should have. 144-pound goal weight. Oh, I see. 140 pounds, goal weight 130, 58 years old. Okay. So let's talk about protein a little bit. So there are three macronutrients: carbs, fats, and protein. Carbs and fats, their primary job in the body is energy, right? So we eat them to get energy. On a keto diet, we mostly eat fat for energy. On a non-keto diet, you might eat some of the other which one. Okay. But I call those the food we eat there is the energy. Protein is can be used for energy, but it's very inefficient. Primarily the function of protein is structural. So we use protein in our body for building, both the structural building like muscle building, but also things like enzymes, synapses, right? Like anything being built, grown, um, every cell um, is coated with protein, right? So protein is the building block. So it's very, very important that we get enough protein. That being said, there's a certain amount we need, and then above that, we don't need it. Doesn't mean it's bad to eat more protein, but there's getting enough is vitally important. More than enough is maybe helpful, but not important, right? So, how do we know what is enough? Well, if we look at things like, I'm going to pull out my phone again for the math because I remember these things in the way they study them, which is in kilograms, and then I have to convert them to pounds for my audience here. So, if I look at, so in the what's called the proteage study, which is a study on how much protein is beneficial for people as they age, they found that between 1.2 and 1.6 grams per kilogram of reference body weight, very important for us, especially as we're aging. When you're young, you can get away with all sorts of BS. But most of my people watching this are probably 30 and above. And for us, it gets much more important to get enough protein. So then when we look at like the recommendations from Finney and Volek for their Virta Health clients who have type 2 diabetes, they're around 1.4 to 1.5 grams. So I usually aim for that as a minimum threshold. Now, are there benefits? So what would that be? So let's look at 1.5 grams. To get that from kilograms to pounds, we divide that by 2.2. So that's 0.68. So we can round that up to zero point 0.7 grams of protein per pound of reference body weight. That's what I call like minimally good. Now, who should eat more than that is a question you might ask. So, so you're saying here your goal weight is 130. So if I go with 130 times zero point 0.7, that means I would not eat less than 91 grams of protein a day if I were in your shoes. That's giving us sort of a minimal amount there. Are there reasons to eat more protein than that? So, for some people, yes. The primary reason that someone might want to eat more grams of protein than that minimal amount is satiety. Some people find protein more satisfying than others. So if you're eating the minimal appropriate amount of protein, your your physical needs will be covered, but will your emotional needs be covered, right? Because for some people, eating a little bit above the minimal necessary protein means that they're just more satisfied with their food and they're fuller and they feel better. those are valid reasons to eat more protein. So, a lot of people have found actually that if they target 1 gram per pound of reference body weight, so in that case for you, that would be 130 grams, they find it easier to stick to the appropriate amount of food intake for them. They're more satisfied, they're happier, they enjoy it. So, for that, I would say just figure out what works best for you, like lifestyle wise, keeping it above the point 0.7 and keeping it, you could even go above 1 gram if you wanted to, but there's a balance because there's a certain amount of caloric intake in a day that's going to keep us working towards our goals. If you overeat, then you're going to find it weight loss goals more challenging to either achieve or maintain. And protein calories count too. I mean, we could get into a little bit of like finicky details about how much they count, but they do count. So they bump it up. So essentially, if you're eating more protein than you need, then you just have to steal those calories from your fat calories. And so that means that your ratio of protein to fat is going to be a little higher, which is fine, but you just have to find what works. So basically, eat in that range of protein between zero point 0.7 and 1 gram per pound of reference body weight. Anywhere in there, just find what works for you. And even if it's a little higher, like 1.1 or 1.15 or whatever, that's fine too. But then you're going to have to eat a little less fat to balance the caloric intake. If that makes sense. It's like you have a budget, you have a total budget, and you just got to put it in the right places. Um, so hopefully that answered your question. Um, Cindy, keto since September 2020, down 102 pounds, off blood pressure medication. Woo! Um, I'm super excited about that. No longer pre-diabetic. Awesome about that. You listened to Dr. Berry say that everyone should know their CAC score. So I had a test done. Oof, your CAC score was 5,552. So that's high, probably. And I assume for your age. Um, uh, Here's the deal. We don't know if this was your first CAC ever. We don't know when that started. Like, we don't know if you started with that high of a CAC before keto or it's been going up on keto. So you can only really look at your that as a baseline. What really matters from there is if it's going up or it's going down. So what will matter is where it goes from there. Because it's possible, you say you're 65 and you've been keto since your early 60s here. So you may have built up most of that calcium in your arteries before you went keto. It's hard to know. So in that case, is keto a benefit? You don't know. I mean, we certainly know it's brought down your A1C, it's brought down your blood pressure, and we know both having diabetes and having a high C sorry, having diabetes and having high blood pressure are both high risk factors for any coronary issues. So those have improved. And so you need to take that into account. But what I would say is you need to know what your CAC is down the line to know if it's getting better or worse. If it's staying stable, that's a good sign. If it's getting worse, well, then that is definitely something you would want to address. So hopefully that helped with some information. But your first CAC reading only tells you where you are, not how it got there or how long it took to get there. Um, Definitely, I would though suggest that some making sure you're being very active and doing all across the board to improve your cardiac outcomes is going to be a benefit. So, like making sure you're active, doing some exercise, those kinds of things can be beneficial. Cheryl says she's doing zero point 0.8 grams protein. If that makes you feel happy, that sounds perfect. Zero point 0.8 grams per pound of reference body weight, I'd assume. Cheryl says, when I weight train, I get tired. Should I? Oh, okay. There's more to that. When I weight train, I get tired. Should I up the protein? Now, My personal opinion is I don't think that more protein necessarily affects whether you feel tired or not. So it might be that you need more sodium when you weight train. That actually can affect how you're feeling in terms of being tired or not. Um, uh, but if you want to lose another 10-ish pounds, um, then I would definitely keep weight training because you're in that range where you're just adjusting your weight, that you're at more risk for loss of lean mass when you lose weight. So keep the weight training up. It's going to help you maintain a good balance of body composition as you lose the weight. So keep with the weightlifting. But you might find that raising the protein up to like 1 gram per pound of reference body weight might be of benefit to you as you start to drop your other calories. So, a little bit more of a high protein ratio for a couple of weeks to a couple of months, dropping down your fat intake, you might find that the weight comes down a little bit. So, that might be what I would do. Linda says, "So nice to see you looking healthy and still sharing your knowledge." Oh, Linda, it's good to see you here. Thank you. I appreciate the compliment. I'm a little self-conscious about the harsh lighting in this room. Anyway, Suzanne says, "I need more protein to keep me satiated." Yeah, I do too. I feel better if I'm like around. So, like for me, probably I would say I would be fine bodily getting closer to 100 to 120 grams, but I like more like 140 to 150 grams of protein for me. I do better on lower fat, higher protein, and a lot of vegetables these days. These things will change over time. Docs and Gal says, what is a CAC? Okay, a CAC is short for a coronary artery calcium score. I think that's what it is. Coronary artery calcium score. Basically, it is a measure of how much calcium has built up in your arteries. It is a test that you have to go get done in a special machine, which is sort of like it's not an X-ray, but it's like an X-ray. It's a scan of your body, and you can get them in a lot of cities without a prescription for around $100, and it tells you how much buildup on calcium you have in your arteries, which happens over time. And that CAC score is like there's a range per age. Like if you're under 40, you should have a 0 kind of thing, or maybe 30. But there's under a certain age, you should always have, here we go, cardiac artery calcium score. So the corner, I don't know. It measures how much calcium you have in your arteries. Um, and so over time we have an expectation that we're gonna have a little bit of that buildup depending on your age. So if you're very old, pick whatever age that is, and you have none, that's good. There's like a normal scale that goes up. So we expect someone, the older you are, the more you might have, but you want to be under the curve. You want to be under average for your age for sure. Um Cheryl, you have some adrenal issues. Yeah, I would work on the sodium. That might help because that weightlifting can absolutely deplete some of your sodium. You might find that that helps. And they've actually found that proper intake of sodium, so having like some extra electrolyte before you lift, can absolutely make your body have a better workout. So that could be helpful. Um, Jeannie says, "How do I break up my 140 grams of protein?" I eat 3 meals a day usually. So I eat anywhere from 30 to 60 grams of protein in a meal. So 30 grams of protein is minimal per meal, in my opinion. Why is that? Well, there is something called the leucine threshold. You could call it that if you want. So you need a certain amount of protein per meal to get over the hump. So let's say I had 6 meals with like 15 grams of protein in each meal. I've never flipped the switch, that leucine trigger that optimizes muscle protein synthesis. I am shortchanging my body. But when I get up to 30 grams in a meal, it's enough to flip that switch, which triggers enough leucine to help that protein go towards muscle building. And so for me, if it's not at least 30 grams of protein, it's not completely wasted. I've missed an opportunity. So that's why I aim for each of my meals to be between 30 and 60 grams of protein. It doesn't need to be high as 60, but to get in what I need over the course of the day, if I was only at 30, that's only 90 grams, right? 30, 30, 30, 90 grams. That's not quite enough. That's not enough protein. So I go in a range. But let's say one meal I feel like I want a big salad with a little bit of cheese and stuff on it, and that's going to be 30 grams. I'm like, it's good enough. Fine. So that's how I arrange it. So, but some people have the misunderstanding on that anything more than 30 grams is wasted. It is absolutely not wasted. Your body can use all the protein you eat. So, don't limit yourself to 30 grams. Just just make sure you get 30 grams in a meal. And for most people, probably if you're getting at least 30 grams in 2 meals a day, you're probably fine. So if you want to be too mad, 2 meals a day, totally fine. Not going to have, unless you're like the top 5% of competitive bodybuilders in the world, they're going to have to dial it in a little better. If you're just your average person trying to be a healthy person, I would say you can get enough protein into your body in 2 meals a day. But at least 30 grams of protein in those meals, and you don't waste it. And if it's more, you can have more. There you go. Um, Somebody asked a question and I forgot it. Let's see. What was it? Oh, how often should we retest? Now, I think the general advice on a CAC is to retest every 5 years, but maybe I would say if it's high, I might want to retest more often than that. But if it was your first test and then you get tested again maybe a year later, this is what I'd want to do. This is not medical advice. This is what I'd want to do as a human person with my own opinions. I'm not a doctor. I cannot give medical advice. Please don't take my medical advice as medical. It is simply a person talking about what they think. Um, if I had a really high score, higher than I expected, I would test a year later and see if it was still the same or it had gone up, and I would feel better. If it was still the same instead of gone up, it had gone up, I would say something I am doing is incompatible with having healthy arteries. I need to change it. Let me figure out what it is that I'm doing that is not appropriate for my body. Um, oh, Karen asked, what would that be in ounces? Um, Protein will vary depending on the source per ounce. So, protein powder, extremely high per ounce, right? Um, but if you're talking about it in the form of meat, you can figure that an ounce of meat will have somewhere between 6 and 7 grams of protein in it. So, the higher the fat, the lower the protein per ounce, right? Because a piece of meat, my hand is a piece of meat. It's a piece of meat, right? It has 3 things in it. It has fat, water, and protein. So, if you think about it, if it's this much meat and it has fat, water, and protein, the more fat it has, the less protein it's going to have because it's this much. So, you're going to want to um, make sure. So, the higher the fat meat, the less protein per ounce. But almost all meat is going to be between 6 and 7 grams of protein per ounce. Now, a very, very high fat meat like pork belly is going to be lower. But think about most muscle meats. So, like uh, chicken breast, chicken thigh. Those are two examples. Chicken thigh, more fat, less protein. Chicken breast, more protein, less fat per piece, right? But almost all of those are going to be between 6 and 7 grams per ounce of meat. So there you go. I can't give you an exact number because it's going to vary based on the meat you choose. But you can, if you're ever wondering, you can look it up in a macro tracker or online on just Google it, right? How much, what are the macros of right in whatever meat source you've got. All right. So, but somewhere in that range is a way you can approximate it. Um, Suzanne, CAC was 0 at 57. Super. Um, Jeannie asked, do I have an approximate eating window? I have an eating window just simply because of how I live my life. If I woke up starving, I would eat. And if I was starving before I went to bed, I would eat. But I try and arrange my meals so I'm not starving, right? So what do I do there? Well, I tend to get up, go about my business, get some stuff done, and then I tend to eat my first meal between 10 and noon. It's just the way my life works out. So, and always make sure that that I'm not eating 3 hours before bed. It's just better for your sleep quality. If you're eating late at night, your sleep quality is going to suffer. So, and sleep quality is one of the most important things for me. So, that means I tend to have a 8-ish hour eating window during the day, but I'm not religious about it. It's just the way I happen to eat, right? But I do think that not eating 3 hours before bed is really important. Now, if I like I said, if I was starving like an hour before bed, I might have an ounce of cheese, like a small thing that just sort of tides me over. But you don't want a full stomach right before you go to bed. One, acid reflux is no one's friend. That stuff's terrible. And lying down with a full belly, ugh, yuck. The second one is even if you don't get the acid reflux, it does affect your sleep quality, so I don't recommend it. So that means that I'll have my first meal between 10 and 11 usually, and I'm ending my eating window by like 8 at the latest usually. Um, but again, that's not because I'm like have a hard eating window. It's just that I try not to eat before bed and then I'm not super hungry right away when I wake up. So that's why I end up with that eating window. Um, yeah, that's what I do. So, um, Docs and Gal says, "Do I use salad dressing on salads?" Yes, I do. But I often make my salad dressing with Greek yogurt. So this is just a hack that I use all the time. I will make dressing with vinegar and Greek yogurt and spices rather than with oil if I'm eating in a fashion where I'm watching my fat intake a little bit more, because I like a lot of dressing. I like a wet salad. And I like sauces. I just like everything wet. I like sauces on my meats, and I like sauce, and I like dressing. I like a lot of that. So because I like so much of it, I tend to try and make them not super, super high fat because I still would like to be about 10 pounds less than I am now. If I were in when I am in a maintenance phase, because I do maintenance phases, I might use a little bit more oil in my dressings. When I'm trying to lose weight, I'm in a weight loss phase, I'll use a little less oil in my dressing. But in either case, I use salad dressing because though I love the taste of vegetables on their own, I also love dressing. So I will make one. So like um one of my favorites is to do like kind of a honey mustard. So I'll do Dijon mustard, Greek yogurt, a little bit of vinegar, and then a little bit of stevia glycerite to sweeten it, kind of make it a sweet honey mustard. So that's one I use all the time. And then I might use just a little bit of water just to thin it down. But I like things pretty vinegary, so you can also use vinegar to water it down. Um, I make a Thousand Island dressing with unsweet, with sugar-free or dill pickle relish, some sugar-free ketchup, a teeny bit of yellow mustard. It's a flavor thing. Greek yogurt, and then some vinegar or water to thin it down. Right. So I can make a ton of different dressings using some Greek yogurt as the base instead of using vinegar as instead of using oil as the base. But I'm not anti-oil. Primal Kitchens uh, salad dressings made with avocado oil are great. I think those are yummy. Or making one of your own using olive oil. I'm a big fan of olive oil as an oil use. So olive oil, lemon, vinegar, all that kind of stuff. So totally not against the use of healthy oils. I am against the use of unhealthy oils, but healthy oils I think are totally awesome to use. It's just a balancing between your macros that work best for your weight loss and your food intake. And so I would just often rather have more fat in the meat choices that I make than adding a lot of oil to the dressings. But someone else may love skinless chicken breast, and so then you have more room for higher fat dressings on your salad. It's all just what fits and works for you. I did not drink enough water today. You know, when you take a sip of water and your body's like, "Yes, that's wonderful. I love that." And other times you're like, "Dude, why are you drinking this? You don't need any more of this." Anyway, all right. The questions have stopped. Are we out of questions? Do you have any more questions? I'm here for your questions. Please let me know. Um, yeah. So over the course of time that I've been keto or low carb or looking to suit my dietary goals, my macros have changed. What I focus on have changed. What I think is important has changed. You know, it's always an evolution. Docs and gals says, do I have a rough estimate of fat grams? I can't. Nope, you can't. It is guess and check. So docs and gals, here's what I would recommend: track your macros for a week. Track your macros just as you eat. Like if you've been eating a certain way, you need just track what you've been eating. So write down everything you ate and then put it in a tracker. At the end of the week, you will have your average food intake for the week. Thank you, Debbie. Um, so you'll know, okay, I averaged 100 grams of protein, 100 grams of fat, and 10 grams of carbs, whatever. Your averages. And then from there, I would make adjustments because my numbers don't matter for your numbers. So the first thing I would do when you know your averages is say, am I eating enough protein? Do I need to bump it up or is it appropriate? Do I need to bump it down? Like, is it right? So first dial in the protein amount. Then second, I would look at the carb amount. Is the carb amount appropriate for you? If being in ketosis is important for you, it might need to be lower. If you don't find it as important, then that's up to you. Then I would look at the fat from there. Are you losing weight and you want to be maintaining? More fat. Are you maintaining your weight and you want to be losing weight? Less fat. Are you gaining weight and you want, right? So you're going to adjust from there. And you're going to be able to make adjustments from there. So let's say you were eating 100 grams of fat and you were maintaining your weight, but you want to be losing some weight. Try dropping it down by 20%. Try dropping it to 80. See what happens for a week. Did you lose some? Like, and so you can just guess and check, just that kind of thing. There are some things you can do to calculate. Like, you could calculate your TDEE. What's TDEE? Total daily energy expenditure. There are trackers online. They are never going to be accurate compared to just tracking what is reality, because there's a range. So if you go online and try and figure it out from the TDEE calculator, or every macro tracker has one of these in the macro tracker. So you put some stuff in there and then it adjusts from there. Not as accurate as just tracking reality. So track for a week. What macro trackers do I like? Chronometer, I think, is fabulous. But again, don't trust. So when you sign up for Chronometer, it'll ask you like what your goals are. Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to gain weight? Yada yada. And then it can suggest macros for you. I don't recommend that. I recommend tracking your actual macros for a week and then adjusting from there. If you track your macros for a week and you don't gain or lose weight, those are appropriate maintenance calories for you. And then you can adjust from there based on what you want to do. So, but um, I think that my very favorite is Chronometer, although I'm trying out another one. So I'll get you back to you. Um, uh, but MyFitnessPal, very iffy. Here's the thing: you only want to use a macro tracker that does not accept macro information from the general public. So, like as an example, MyFitnessPal lets people in the wild enter in macros for foods. They crowdsource it, which means not a lot of people are very accurate. So they're putting wrong information in the app. You don't want an app that allows people to put information in the app. You need that information to be verified by the people that work for the app. So there you go. So chronometer is my favorite of them. Um, Again, but I'm trying out some different ones. Is there a minimum fat goal? Yeah, about 0.3 grams per kilogram. No, yeah, is it pound? 0.3 grams per pound of reference body weight is a minimum. Why is, and I'm not suggesting anyone go that low, but that's a minimum in terms of making sure you're getting enough fat to process your fat soluble vitamins. So I don't want people going below that. So that would mean like if your goal weight was 150 grams, hello, if your goal weight was 150 pounds, then I wouldn't eat below 50 grams. Point 0.3, it's like probably, that's actually more like 47, but right, like a third. Um, Can you do that for a short period of time? Absolutely. You can go lower than that for a very short period of time, but on an ongoing basis, I would not do that. I would not go below the zero point 0.3 grams per pound of reference body weight. Dennis has spelled it correctly. Chronometer. There's no H. Chronometer. 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 There's a free version and a paid version. The free version is pretty good. The only difference is you don't get ads and you get a few extra functionalities. The information, the database, same database, so just as accurate. Dennis says ketovore, beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. I think ketovore is great, and I think beef, butter, bacon, and eggs is great. Just depends what you're looking to do. For me, here's the deal for me. So some of you may disagree with my approach. I am a caloric intake believer. Why? I lost a lot of my weight not paying attention to calories. I definitely think that is the way to go. Absolutely. If you can get to and achieve your goals without paying attention to it, it's easier. It's not as complicated. It's more intuitive. But I stalled over 200 pounds. I continued. I lost almost 100 pounds, but I couldn't get under 200 pounds. And I am not 7 feet tall. I'm tall, but I'm not that tall. I was not an appropriate height to weigh 200 pounds. And so I wanted to lose more weight and not counting calories, I couldn't. I couldn't get below that threshold. So I started counting calories and I found freedom there. I found joy. I found I could achieve my goals better paying attention to them than not paying attention to them. So I tend to work with people who need more than just getting the garbage out of their diet. I don't have the garbage in my diet anymore. I still couldn't lose all the weight I wanted to. So different strokes for different folks. And I tend to talk to the hard cases, the people who struggle even more, that maybe BBBE is awesome for them, but not quite enough, that need to go a little further. Do I think that means that just beef, butter, bacon, and eggs is wrong? Absolutely not. I think it's a fabulous approach. I just talk to the people that have more challenges than fewer challenges. And so I work with the hard cases who need extra fine tuning. Docs and Gal says, I hardly eat any veggies at all. Pretty ketovore. How do you spell? Okay, you got the spelling. Stay safe, Debbie Sue. Jujubee says, I need to get back to eating breakfast. I lost 6 pounds moving. I had a chef make an omelet. Oh, love it. Love it. I'm not eating breakfast. So um, some people find that when they eat breakfast, they eat less later in the day, and then that can really be very, very beneficial. Shelly, my new class is going to start. I'm like, what month is that? April 2nd. So in like 2 weeks, I'll put information out about it next week. Keto Unstuck. So keep your eye out, Shelly. Pat says, in Common Sense Labs book, I know you recommend lab ranges. Yep, but does it also include any tips to improve the numbers? Not really, to be perfectly honest, Pat, because it's really going to depend. Oh, it's really going to depend on what's going on with the numbers and how they're being caused. So it's more how to track them. Um, Debbie Sue says I'm a hard case. Getting the garbage out of my diet stalled at 206. Yeah, well, join us in Keto Unstuck for sure, or just keep watching the lives. They're here for you. Um, um, Yeah, beef, butter, bacon, eggs work great for many people. I think it's a fabulous approach. I think it's great to do. I think it can help a lot of people manage um, their intake. So no shade at it. I'm just here for the people it didn't work for because it's like it works for so many people. I'm here for the other people, right? Right? Do the simple thing. If the simple thing works, fabulous. Stay with the simple thing. The simple thing didn't work, come over to the complicated side and maybe we can work together to figure out why it didn't work and then we'll go from there. Cosmo Cosmic says, love my videos. Thank you. Appreciate that. What do I think about taking melatonin for better sleep? Um, very, very small microdoses, way below almost any commercially available melatonin, may be of benefit to some people sometimes. But um, in more cases than not, melatonin is problematic than beneficial. It's very hard to dial it in. It's very easy to get too much. And when you get too much, it's more harm than benefit. So it could be of benefit in very small microdoses in very specific circumstances for some people, but most people take too much. All right, let's look and then we'll wrap it up. Jujubee says, if I have the whole Dr. Berry thyroid lab panel except one of the antibodies, the rest are okay. How hard should I push? Oh, the TPO. If you think you have Hashimoto's, push hard. If you don't think you have Hashimoto's, don't. It just tells you if you have Hashimoto's. Um, all right. I'm just seeing if there are any quick questions because I got to wrap it up because I got to go home because I'm not at home. I got to get home. Um, yeah, the fat. Guess for what force? Yeah, the fat amount is going to be very individual per person. I'll talk to Amy about writing the book, Janine. um, Jujubee says, okay, so if the on the thyroid, so if the rest are okay, could that one be bad? Um, Probably not if your TGB, your thyroglobulin is good. They usually get off together. But if so but you can order that test yourself in like most states. I don't know if you're in the UK or Canada where it would be more challenging, but if you live in like 45 of the 50 United States, you can literally just go to ultalabs.com and order that test. And it's not going to be super expensive. So if you just want to check it, you can order it yourself. All right, guys, I got to wrap up for the evening because my boyfriend's going to pick me up to take me home. So good night, everybody. I will talk to you next week. If I missed any of your questions at the end, ask them earlier next time. All right. Bye, guys.